The shimmer of Velmara IX's ocean was like no water Kaelin Stroud had ever seen. Lit from beneath by the planet's twin moons, it pulsed with an almost biological glow. The warm scent of salt and orchid moss drifted over the evening tide as he scanned the reef line with a practiced eye. Nothing ever stayed calm for long on this planet, not with the diplomatic suites, the alien royalty, and their strange laws stacked behind him like glass castles on the cliffs. A sharp splash cut through the air. Kaelin turned instantly. That wasn't a native bird or a cresting fish, it was heavy, deliberate, human-sized, and unauthorized. He dropped his scanner, yanked the seal on his hydropack, and dove. The water swallowed him whole, wrapping his body in glowing ribbons. The alien sea was warm and thick, making every movement feel like wading through silk. His visor adjusted, highlighting a pale shape flickering just below a body. Female. Long limbs, a tangle of silvery hair, and skin that shimmered like pearl under blue light. She wasn't moving. He kicked hard, cutting through the current. A cluster of coral vines had snared her leg, the kind that clung like live netting. Her arms twitched weakly, gills fluttering near her neck like dying embers. Kaelin's mind shifted into rescue mode. He gripped her under the arms, avoiding her gills. The coral scraped his arm, drawing blood, but he pulled until the vines snapped. She convulsed, mouth opening in a soundless gasp. "Hold on," he muttered, pushing upward. They broke the surface. She coughed water, eyes wide and unfocused, and then went limp in his arms. He dragged her onto the stone ledge bordering the ceremonial pools where no human was supposed to step. Not uninvited. Not ever. He didn't care. She looked alien and beautiful and frightening. Skin that caught the starlight in shifting hues, irises that bloomed like ink in water, and a barely there gown of liquid thread. She wasn't breathing. "Damn it," he whispered, tilting her head, checking the gill slits. Nothing. He braced, gave her 2 sharp compressions, then pressed his mouth to hers. The taste of salt and something sweet struck him as her lips parted. A violent shudder rocked her chest. She gasped, gills flaring open in a desperate inhale, and her eyes snapped to his. For a second, neither moved. Her pupils dilated as she stared at him, frozen between breath and thought. Then she spoke, her voice barely audible, her language a whisper of velvet syllables. "Enesheth all Moran." His visor translated softly, "Now you are mine." Kaelin blinked. "What?" Her fingers weakly touched his cheek before her eyes rolled back, and she passed out. Footsteps slammed behind him. He turned too late. A squad of Velmaran guards, tall, armored, eyes glowing under bio-helmets, surrounded him in seconds. "Do not move," the commander barked, stepping forward. Female, stern-jawed, black armor laced with royal crest lines. "You have violated restricted royal waters." She was drowning, Kaelin snapped, rising slowly with his hands up. She was caught, she would have died. The woman's eyes narrowed. She nodded at a medic, who scanned the girl and paled. "Princess Lyrie," he murmured. The air changed. Even the guards seemed to recoil slightly. The commander straightened. "You touched the heir to the Velmaran Tide throne during breathless rite. Without consent. During vulnerability." Kaelin scowled. "I saved her." "You claimed her," the commander said coldly. "By our law, you have invoked the bond of deep breath. A sacred rite of union. That's insane. I didn't even know who she." "You performed mouth breath. You pulled her from sacred water. You looked into her eyes during reclamation. The rite is sealed." "This is ridiculous." "I didn't." "You will be detained until the Royal Council convenes," she cut him off. "And may the stars spare you if she does not deny the bond." 2 guards moved forward. Kaelin stepped back. "You're making a mistake." The commander's voice dropped to ice. "You already made it, Terran." He looked down at the unconscious girl again. "No, the princess." Her chest now rose steadily, and a strand of her glowing hair stuck to his arm. The gills along her neck moved softly, like petals in breeze. She didn't look like royalty. She looked like someone who'd nearly died. Someone fragile and strange and real. "Will she be okay?" he asked quietly. The commander paused. "That depends." On what? On whether she wants you. They shackled him with translucent cuffs that vibrated with kinetic lockfields. As they led him away, Kaelin looked over his shoulder one last time. She stirred slightly, eyes fluttering open for a breath. Just long enough to see him being dragged away. Their eyes met. This time, she didn't speak. But she didn't look afraid. She looked possessive. The cell wasn't a cell. It was a floating glass chamber suspended over water, lit from below by a soft, bioluminescent current. Alien serenity disguised the fact that Kaelin was still a prisoner. He paced barefoot on the transparent floor. His uniform was gone, replaced by a loose white tunic that made him look like a resort guest instead of someone waiting to be charged with an interstellar crime. Bond of deep breath, he muttered, rubbing a sore spot on his wrist where the cuffs had clamped too tight. What kind of law punishes someone for saving a life? He heard a soft hiss. The door, an arch of iridescent vapor, peeled open. He expected guards. Instead, it was her. Princess Lyrie stood in the entryway, robed in layered blue silk that shifted like ocean foam. Her silver hair fell loose, still damp at the ends. Thin gill lines pulsed along her neck. But what struck Kaelin most were her eyes, clear, sharp now, focused entirely on him. "I asked to see you," she said, stepping inside. Kaelin's jaw tightened. "Didn't expect a thank you. But I also didn't expect an engagement notice." She blinked, slowly. "You mock our customs. I don't even understand your customs." She moved closer, graceful but not soft. Regal. Calculated. "You breathed life into me," she said. In Velmoran culture, that act, performed during a state of dying vulnerability, triggers the rite of binding. A rare, sacred event. "I wasn't trying to bind anyone," Kaelin said. "You were dying. I did what I'm trained to do." Lyrie tilted her head. "Intent is irrelevant to the rite. The bond is biological, cultural, legal, ancient." Kaelin folded his arms. "So I'm supposed to marry you now?" Her voice didn't rise. "Technically, yes." He stared. She didn't flinch. Then, finally, she sat cross-legged on a low circular bench that rose from the floor with a soft hum. "I didn't ask for this," she added. "But I also didn't ask to drown. So perhaps fate moves quicker than politics." He stepped forward. "Why am I really here, Princess?" "Lyrie," she said. "Drop the title. You've already crossed every line." "Fine, Lyrie. Why bring me here?" She looked out the glass wall toward the glowing sea beyond. "Because Commander Velix wants you gone. Memory wiped. Deportation by void shuttle." "But I intervened." Kaelin blinked. "Why?" She turned her head slowly toward him. "Because you didn't hesitate." He didn't know what to say to that. Instead, he dropped onto the opposite bench and leaned forward on his knees. "You ever been saved before?" he asked. "No," she said. "Royalty isn't allowed to drown." He chuckled, bitter. "Earth's not much different. We're just less poetic about it." A silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, but uncertain. Kaelin glanced at her hands. Thin fingers, webbed slightly between knuckles. Alien but elegant. "I lost someone once," he said quietly. Earth sighed. "Little girl, maybe 6. Car wreck in a submerged tunnel. I got there late." Lyrie's eyes softened. "You couldn't save her." "No. And I see her every time I close my eyes. That's why I dive. Even when I shouldn't." She nodded once, not out of pity, but understanding. "You were the first person I saw," she said after a pause. "Underwater. Your eyes. They were steady." "You didn't look scared," he replied. "You looked angry." "I was. At myself." She stood suddenly and crossed the room in 2 slow steps, pressing her hand to the glass. Outside, silvery creatures swam past like glowing ribbons. "I'm to be wed to someone I do not care for," she said. "A nobleman who sees me as a symbol. Not a person." Kaelin rose beside her. "And now you're stuck with me instead?" She glanced sideways. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you choose to stay." He shook his head. "You said this bond was automatic." She turned to face him fully. It is declared. But it must be consummated, publicly accepted before the council. Otherwise, it fades. Quietly. Painfully. He laughed. Convenient. Her expression didn't change. Painful, not convenient. Another silence. Kaelin looked away first. I didn't come to Velmara for politics. I came to disappear. And yet, she whispered, you surfaced. He opened his mouth to respond, then froze as the door hissed again. Commander Velix entered, flanked by 2 guards. Her gaze swept the room, icy and precise. Your Highness, she said sharply. This private audience violates council protocol. Lyrie didn't blink. So does threatening my mate. Kaelin coughed. I'm not. She cut him off without even looking. Not yet. Velix's eyes narrowed. Enough. The council will convene at cycle's end. If you do not publicly validate the bond, the human will be erased and returned to Earth. Kaelin frowned. Erased. Neural cleansing, Velix said flatly. A mercy. Lyrie stepped between them. He will remain here under my protection. You are not Empress yet. No, Lyrie said. But I am alive. And he made that possible. The commander glared at Kaelin. Enjoy your final hours, Terran. You've been drafted into a game far beyond your station. As Velix turned to leave, Kaelin called after her. I didn't ask for this. She didn't even pause. Then you should have let her drown. The doors closed. Lyrie and Kaelin stood alone again. Tension hung in the air like humidity before a storm. Kaelin finally exhaled. So, if I accept this bond. You live, she said. And so do I. His jaw clenched. And if I walk? I face a union with someone I fear. You vanish. He rubbed his neck, trying to steady the chaos inside him. You don't even know me. Lyrie stepped forward, voice calm. Then stay. Let me learn. Their eyes locked. Not as strangers. Not entirely. As 2 souls, each drowning in something deeper than water. The walls hummed with the tide's pulse, a deep vibration that moved through Kaelin's bones as if the ocean itself were breathing. Outside the glass suite, the alien sea glowed faintly in early twilight. Inside, silence stretched. Kaelin sat cross-legged near the floor, absently watching his reflection ripple on the surface of a shallow pool. He hadn't left the chamber since Lyrie's visit. Food appeared when he needed it. No doors opened. No guards spoke. And no answers came. The vapor seal hissed open again without warning. This time, Lyrie didn't knock. She entered quickly, cloak clutched around her shoulders, breath uneven. Her eyes were sharp, too sharp. Not like before. What happened? Kaelin stood. She hesitated, then pulled off the cloak. The robe beneath shimmered with ceremonial threads, intricate silver patterns woven into rich indigo fabric. Her hair was tightly bound, and a pale crest had been painted across her collarbone. Kaelin stared. You were at a royal event. She nodded once. The council preview. I was formally presented to my intended bondmate. Your noble fiancé, Lord Revik. The moment he touched my wrist, I nearly vomited. Kaelin exhaled. Sorry. I told them the bond was void. She turned toward him. I told them I already had a mate. His heart skipped. You said that. I told them your name. I invoked the deep breath right. She paused. They demanded confirmation, public, before the next cycle. So that's it. Kaelin said. A choice between a man you hate and a stranger you barely know? Lyrie stepped closer. Not a stranger anymore. He didn't respond. He just watched her move, measured, regal, but tense. Tell me something, she asked. Why do you flinch when someone says your name with kindness? Kaelin frowned. What? Every time I speak gently, you tense. As if it hurts. He swallowed. Maybe I'm not used to it. Then learn. Her hand reached up, fingertips brushing the side of his neck where the scar from the earth tunnel still lingered. He didn't move. Couldn't. You still think this is a trap, she whispered. I know it is, he said. Even if you don't mean it to be. I mean it to be escape, she corrected. For both of us. He stared down at her, voice low. If we go through with this, we're tied. Forever. That's what your laws say, right? She nodded. But choice seals the right. Not blood. Not fate. Will. What if I walk away? I'll be bonded to a man who sees me as a political trophy, she said. He'll cage me. Breed me. End what little freedom I've clawed for. Kaylin's hands curled into fists. You said this was about learning me. Understanding. It still is. He turned away, back to the pool. And if you learn I'm not what you want, then I'll live with the taste of your breath for the rest of my life. The words hit harder than she probably intended. She stepped behind him. Look at me. He did. She was trembling. Not from fear, but from the edge of something else, uncertainty, maybe. Or anticipation. If I touch you, she said, you can still walk away after. Kaylin shook his head. That's not how this works. It's how I want it to work. Her hand touched his chest. The connection sparked down his spine like heat through water. His heart thudded once, twice, and then she pressed closer. Lyrie. You've been alone so long, you forgot what warmth feels like. His breath caught as she kissed him. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't commanding. It was quiet, like sinking into a tide that pulled just hard enough to remind him what it meant to feel wanted. He kissed her back. The air changed. Her fingers tangled in his tunic. His arms wrapped around her waist. Their bodies moved together, not frantic but sure, as if both had been waiting for something they didn't know they were missing. She pulled him toward the central platform. The pool shifted, parting like liquid glass. Beneath it, a bed rose, grown from coral and silken membranes that adjusted to weight and warmth. He hesitated. She met his eyes. You can leave. He didn't. Clothes fell like mist. Skin met skin, different textures, different rhythms, but it didn't matter. She gasped when he kissed the hollow of her throat, when his hands traced the lines of her back where her gills fluttered with pleasure. He whispered her name, and she whispered his. The tide outside seemed to match their motion. Later, they lay in silence. Her head rested against his chest, hair fanned across his shoulder like silver threads. You still afraid? She asked. Yes, he admitted. Of me? No, he said. Of what happens next? She rose slightly, propping herself on one elbow. The council will summon us at sunrise. They'll ask if the bond is true. And we say. Her voice didn't waver. Yes. He studied her face, no hesitation, no trickery. She meant it. But the peace was shattered when the chamber's walls flared red. The door hissed open again, this time not quietly. Commander Velix stormed in, 2 guards behind her, weapon drawn. She stopped at the threshold, taking in the scene, their intertwined bodies, the scattered clothing, the coral bed still shifting beneath them. Her expression didn't change. But her voice cut through the room like a blade. So. The rumors are true. Lyrie stood slowly, drawing the robe back around her. You should knock. You've doomed yourself, Velix snapped. Do you understand what this means? What it costs? I understand exactly what I chose, Lyrie said coldly. And who I chose. Kaylin got to his feet. You going to arrest me again? Velix lowered her weapon slightly. No. Not yet. But I'll see you both at sunrise. Then she turned and left. Lyrie let out a slow breath. It's done now. Kaylin looked at her. And if they vote against us? She stepped into his arms. Then we make our own tide. The council chamber rose like a pearl from the sea, a dome of translucent crystal, floating just above Velmara's tide line. Inside, the ceiling shifted with the currents overhead, casting light that moved like thought. Kaylin stood at the center on a raised platform of living coral. No handcuffs. No armor. Just the ceremonial white tunic, damp from the ocean spray that clung to his skin. The air was cool, but his back was hot with eyes, nobles, emissaries, judges in iridescent robes arranged in a circle around him. Directly across the room, seated atop a crescent dais, sat Lyrie. She wore no veil today. No crest. Her hair was unbound, her face bare. Even stripped of titles, She looked unshakably regal. And alone. Commander Velix paced behind the council. The deep breath rite, Velix began, voice crisp, was invoked outside traditional ceremony. It was initiated by the human male under questionable intent. That's a lie, Kaelin said flatly. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Velix glared. You overstepped boundaries. I saved her life, Kaelin replied, stepping forward. You want to spin it as seduction or opportunism, but I didn't even know who she was. I just saw someone drowning. Yet you didn't report the incident through official channels, Velix countered. You made physical contact with a royal during a sacred moment of vulnerability. She would have died, he interrupted. No scanner. No medic. Just me. I did what any human trained for rescue would have done. One of the elders, an ancient Velmoran with translucent skin and violet eyes, raised a hand. Intent aside, the rite was fulfilled. What remains is choice. Do both parties affirm the bond? Lyri stood. Her voice carried, steady and sharp. Yes. I choose him. The chamber stiffened. The elder looked to Kaelin. And you? He looked across the room at Lyri, at the water shifting above them, at the faces etched with judgment. Then he spoke without flinching. I didn't come here to find love, he said. I didn't come here for politics or power. But I found someone who made me feel alive again. Someone who didn't see a broken man, or a foreigner, or a threat. Just me. He turned to the council. I choose her. Not because of the right. Because I want her. A silence followed. Then, slowly, the eldest councillor leaned forward. Do you both accept the consequences of this union? Lyri nodded. Without hesitation. So be it. Just as the words echoed into quiet, Velix stepped forward. I object. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Commander, the elder warned, your role here is advisory. Then advise them to reconsider, Velix snapped. This human has no roots in our culture. No history. No loyalty to our laws. If this bond proceeds, it sets a precedent that undermines every tradition we've protected for millennia. Lyri's gaze didn't waver. You mean the traditions that kept me silent? Hidden? Owned? Velix turned on her. I've served your mother. I protected this court long before you understood what power costs. Kaelin stepped between them. Let me say something to her. The elder nodded. He turned to Velix. You think I don't belong here? That I'm just a momentary glitch in your perfect order? But you're wrong. Because what I did wasn't rebellion, it was instinct. Compassion. Maybe that's not your kind of logic, but it's the reason I breathe. Velix stared, unmoved. I'm not here to take your place. Or change your world overnight. But if your laws make it illegal to save someone, or love them afterward, then maybe the laws are what need changing. A long pause. Then the elder rose. We have heard both sides. The law is clear. A chosen bond confirmed by both parties stands above ritual. We do not judge love only whether it's real. He turned to Lyri and Kaelin. You are now tidebound. May your union bring balance. A soft chime echoed across the chamber. The platform beneath their feet shifted, lowering slowly into a shallow ceremonial pool. Lyri stepped down with him, her bare feet touching the glowing water. She reached for his hand. He took it. The moment their fingers met, the pool brightened, casting ripples of color that pulsed outward, an ancient biological marker of bond confirmation. The council bowed their heads. The ceremony was complete. Outside, the skies dimmed as twilight set in. The tide rose just enough to surround the chamber, leaving the couple waist-deep in luminescent warmth. Lyri turned to him, her expression softer now. You never asked what the final line of the rite means. I figured I already broke enough rules. She smiled. It means, let the ocean remember your first breath together, so even the stars cannot forget. Kaelin exhaled. That's a lot of pressure. Then let's not give them a reason to forget. She leaned in. Their lips met, not in urgency, but in something deeper. Recognition. Trust. The kind that comes from surviving together, from choosing each other when nothing made sense. And somewhere above them, beneath the gaze of 1,000 watching stars, the tides carried their names into the deep.